Hello, all of you Courage, Confidence, and Connections podcast fans. Thanks for joining me again with a wonderful guest. We haven't seen each other for a long time because we went through a podcast when we're all shut up in the house 5 years ago, and here we are again, and our lives have been changing. So I don't even want to try to pronounce your last name, Christina, but welcome, Christina, and I'll let you tell our audience how to say it. I can say TNT, but yeah, go ahead and introduce yourself for a moment.
Yeah, so it's Christina Tsutsui-Tharp, which is why I go by TNT because it's easier to say, and I'm the bomb, my little catchphrase. Uh, but yeah,
I love that.
what
That's
all would you like me to introduce?
Oh no, we're just going to get started. I'd
Okay.
love to have you tell our audience a little bit about your background. Like I was born and raised in a different state, North Carolina, and just give us a little bit of a tour of Christina's life as we work our way forward.
Oh, I'm born and raised in Oregon. I have lived in a few other places here and there. I lived in Topeka, Kansas for a short period when I was very, very young, so probably from 2 to 7. I don't really remember much of that. And then a short stint in Southern California around my freshman year. And that was a culture shock because I primarily lived in a little village of 200 people. So going from that to Southern California and San Bernardino was shocking. So I'm definitely a small town girl. And
Wow.
yeah, I mean, now it's just mostly been in Central Oregon. I've kind of been anywhere from Culver, Madras, Prineville, Bend, Sun River, all over. Chamalt is the little village that I grew up in, though.
Are you kidding? I know about Shamal, dear. I think that's where you have to go to catch the train.
That's usually the only reason people know where it is.
But I didn't take the train. I was just being given the tour in a past life and stopped there on the way to other places south as a little, I guess there's a big convenience store or something there that's very popular or
There's a truck stop now. That's the other reason people know about it. So that's actually where I used to live. My house was tore down for that truck stop to come in, and it was actually moved. It was moved to another location.
oh wow. Well, you have a place in history with that,
Yeah.
don't you? That is fantastic. I don't think I've interviewed a number of people, and I don't think I've actually had anybody on the show that was a native Oregonian, even though you left for a stint, a native Oregonian, let alone one with a landmark. So
Yes. Yeah.
that is fantastic. And I know you've done a number of businesses and things like that, but I'd like to know what influenced you to let's track back. I met you through a ladies type of business, I think, when you were doing that before you made other transitions. So tell me a little bit about the passion that puts you in these different businesses. I know you've got passion, and then we'll get on to some courage because I know you've been through some stuff that took courage. So tell us about your passions.
I am very passionate about working, honestly. So in Chamalt, my grandparents owned a restaurant and a motel, and that's probably where I was introduced to being an entrepreneur. And I knew that I always wanted to work for myself, and that was my goal. So I don't know what I want to do other than be my own boss and be a business owner. And and that kind of led into I was a sexual health educator for 10 years and empowered women in their relationships and in their confidence um, and then moved on to real estate, opened my own real estate brokerage, and now I'm venturing into the co-working space as well, and a lot more in between. So it's kind of ever flowing.
Well, definitely there's a passion for being a business owner, and sounds like the heritage and the family gave you a lot of influence. So, as a kid, did you get involved in the business? Did they put you doing little jobs and teaching you? Yeah, tell me a little bit about that. I think that's a fun story.
I worked in the restaurant, bussing tables, washing dishes. learned the motto from my grandma, if there's time for leaning, there's time for cleaning. And there is no idle, yeah, you keep moving, especially in the hospitality industry. And I I always just liked having things to do. Living in a small town, there wasn't a lot to do. And if I wasn't working, I was probably getting into trouble. We
That's
won't get into those stories too much, uh, but I definitely enjoyed being a part. I think it was part of being a part of a community too,
mm-hmm.
working and being in the businesses. If I wasn't working at the restaurant, I worked at their motel. So my grandparents owned the motel and a restaurant down there, where I was babysitting. I started a newspaper down there too. So I mean, it goes pretty deep.
Yeah, the entrepreneurial spirit I think you were born with, from what I'm hearing. Did you ever do a lemonade stand or anything like that by the side of the road? Because a lot of traffic goes by there.
Yeah, no, we were taught very, very early. You do not stay near the highway. Highway 97 is a pretty dangerous place.
It is.
So none of that. If I had lived in a little neighborhood, maybe,
Yeah.
but I did. So this came up actually the other day. I was on a Boy Scout outing. I had to help some people chain up, and we used to go. A bunch of us teenagers would go hang out at the gas stations and help people put their chains on for like 20 bucks a pop. So we'd go make money and help people put their chains on because they didn't know how.
Yeah. That's a good business because, some of us are not adept at that. Being from the South, chains, you put what on your, your
Yeah.
chains? I don't, I'm not one to go out in the winter anyway. It doesn't bother me. It can snow high 5 feet and I'll like, okay, y'all go ahead. I'm from the South. Don't get, well, we did, but when you do, you get paralyzed when you get that kind of snow. 3 feet and 3 inches, actually, you're done out there. Well, since we're talking about courage, confidence, and connections, you and I met, and we'll get to connections, but that's how I met you, was through some networking and stuff like that. Oh, probably, I don't know, 6, 7 years ago. I believe we met through Chicks Connect, which is no longer in existence, a women's group. That was fun. And I know you
It was an
were,
amazing group.
oh, I know, it's sad that it doesn't exist anymore, but who has time to start it anyway? Um, but you were a leader in that. We were both leaders at different times in that group. But let's talk courage before we backpedal too far. And I'd love to have you share, because I see you as a very super courageous woman who, you know, you run I know we need to talk about this. Aren't you a fireman or something? A fire person, fire lady,
I
fire.
was in an emergency response, disaster response with the American Red Cross.
Yes, talk a little bit about that, because that in itself is a very courageous thing to take on in your life and very dangerous.
Yeah, that I would definitely, I'm very passionate about that too. And service. I think, I led with like the business and everything, but I'm very passionate about being of service.
Hmm.
I I really love volunteering with different organizations. And I got into the Red Cross um, through they have the home fire campaign, which is where we go in and install smoke alarms in people's homes for free, and then we educate them on evacuation protocols and safety things that they can be prepared for, just how to be prepared. And that is not a very long process. There's only so many homes we can install smoke alarms in, and then I wanted stuff to do more, and I got involved with the blood drive. Everyone knows about the blood drives with the American Red Cross, but then they introduced me to um, emergency response at a local level. So if someone would deal with a home fire or a flood, or when we had the big snowstorms, the Red Cross will go in and interview the affected families and offer them some financial assistance and then some resources as well until their insurance could kick in or other other help. Um, and that doesn't also happen very often. And it just like, it was like the gateway drug, right? Just like chickens. Chickens are the gateway drug for homesteading. Um, but then I wanted to do more. I wanted to do more, and they told me about national response. So we would go to hurricanes, wildfires, tornadoes after these major disasters. They typically get us there before, if we could. Hurricane season was a big one. We could kind of foresee when we needed to be there. So we would go on 14-day responses and work for those. So it was a minimum of 14 days, and then you could extend, and you'd go in, and there are a lot of different roles. But I've done feeding, so I drive the emergency response vehicles, damage assessment, um, sheltering. So I do whatever I could.
That's amazing. So you traveled out of state, or were you just in Oregon? Out of state?
Yeah, I did go out of state quite often. This was through the pandemic, so we were one of the first
Hmm.
groups to open a shelter after the Oregon fires in 2020, when our entire state was devastated, across the Cascades. The first shelters through a pandemic, and it was traumatizing on both sides, for the volunteers and for the people who lost their homes.
We got hit really, really hard, and that that whole thing that you guys do now, I don't know if you're still, are you still doing that, any of that, or is that?
Unfortunately, I did have to take a leave from that after opening my own brokerage, and then some other things came up. But I really look forward to going back to do that.
That's amazing. That's something that I think a lot of us, having now been through hurricanes, and thankfully not too close to tornadoes, but hurricanes and then wildfires not too close to where I've lived, but the effect that it has on people. I know somebody who lost, they were in Paradise, California, and they lost everything, absolutely everything. They did rebuild here, but I don't think if we've never been through it or been on the other side of it helping people, we realize how bad, because my home state of North Carolina, got hit tremendously hard last year. And I still don't know if everybody I had met or know made it because we're not connected. But I can't imagine, we don't think about being traumatized if you're helping. Only like if we go through it, yeah, we go through trauma. But that's the first time I've heard someone say that you can get traumatized as a volunteer or a worker. But it makes sense. The things you see are horrific.
It is, and I I still have a hard time talking about it.
Okay. Okay. If you can't, it's okay.
People don't understand that, those fires happened 5 years ago, and there are still people to this day who have not been able to find a new home. So it's it's not just when that disaster happens and shortly after.
Mm-mm.
This goes on for years that people are still struggling.
Wow, Christina.
One of the other positions, and I would love to, just put a plug for anyone to volunteer
Hmm.
if they can. Um, there's casework also. So I've worked casework where we work with the families and the people who are affected and give them the resources and try and help them navigate. And then that it can be very taxing on the volunteers, helping people go through that, because it comes to a point where we run out of resources and we don't know how to help. We can just be a person, be someone there for them.
Yeah. Yeah, your humanity is affected. There's no way to avoid that, even if you've never been through it. And being a coach, I deal with people that have been through stuff, going through stuff. I've been through stuff, but nothing of that magnitude. And it's easy to sit and watch it on social media, sort of. What matter of fact, I couldn't though. When the floods hit where I'm from, I had to stop. One day I was watching too much, and I felt the trauma. I felt just from a video. And it's just I don't think we can figure it out. I don't think we can just separate ourselves, as we're human beings. And I admire people like you who have the courage, and that's a step of courage that not many people can take or would be willing to take. But I just applaud you. I really do on the bravery to walk into those situations and make a difference because I know you made a difference. I know you did. You are welcome. Well, we didn't expect to go down that road, but I'm glad we did because I want people to be aware there are human beings out there trying to help, but it's hard for you too. So thank you for sharing that. Now, on to a little different subject. And you are again a very courageous woman. I've always thought that. I've just, I've seen you push through circumstances and difficulties and starting your own real estate company after working in the field of helping women. Now, what propelled you into a completely different segment of or different industry? So that took courage. So give us some ideas on how that played out for you and how courage came into play and confidence, because that's a big step.
Yeah, that was pretty scary. I did that, for 10 years. And what really happened was my dad passed away in 2017 and he lived in Chemult still. That was really one of the main reasons I didn't move too far from home after graduating. Uh, I didn't I didn't want to leave him. And so I just moved to Bend. I was in Bend, and when he passed away, I kind of had slowly been losing my passion for that line of work as well. There's a lot of taboo that I was constantly facing being an educator and an educator who provided adult novelty products, that there were constant battles that I got tired of facing. And I didn't enjoy helping people in that way anymore because it felt like it was a constant joke.
Oh,
I know that I did make a difference in a lot of lives,
mm,
uh, but I was also struggling in my own relationship. So it was hard to put on that face to be like, oh, I'm going to help you in your relationship, but I'm struggling in mine. And uh, I was on a debt freedom journey.
mm,
I started eliminating as much debt as possible and minimizing and trying to simplify my life. So we decided to sell our house. And I did meet a realtor at that time, who was also one of our chicks. And um, through the process, I guess I just asked her all the right questions.
mhm.
And she was like, you should really think about becoming a real estate agent. She's like, you have an understanding on things on the other end that most people don't.
Yeah.
Uh, and I had already known that I was kind of out of the other industry. I was phasing out and I didn't know what I wanted to do. Um, so I got very intrigued and I decided, I was like, yeah, sure, I'll look into that. And um, I jumped into real estate. Uh, she mentored me for quite some time, and then we moved out to Prineville, and I knew that I could be like the Crook County representative of that company because we were kind of spread. We had one in Lapine, one in Prineville, one in Bend, and yeah. And then I, it wasn't very long that I decided to just open my own real estate brokerage. Uh, and then
Yeah.
with that, I will say that the transition was very smooth for me. And I have to tell people this all the time, that because real estate can look really easy from the outside, especially when someone like me comes in and I make it look really easy. I hit the ground running. I closed deal after deal after deal, and I was top, like one of the top producers my first year. But I also worked with women for 10 years and talked to them about their most intimate parts of their lives. So when I transitioned to real estate, now I'm talking to people about the largest financial decisions of their lives. And women are the primary deciding members in a relationship. So it's not like I took the database with me. They were already following me and my journey. So it kind of naturally, they were like, oh, you're in real estate now. I already trust you. I know, like, and trust you. I'm working with you. And my husband doesn't have anything to say. So it was, I was very fortunate in that it transitioned well.
Well, that's fantastic. You know, your confidence was there because of what you'd already lived through. And and you're right. I mean, that is definitely the very core of intimacy that you know things, you've talked about things, you've helped women. And so that was a natural transition. And but you spent a little time doing some homesteading before this next transition, or didn't you? Weren't you homesteaders of some sort?
Yes, when we moved out to Prineville, we ultimately wanted more space. We had chickens when we lived in Bend, and like I said, they're the gateway. Be careful if you're thinking about getting chickens. Like you're eventually just going to need a lot of acreage. Just gonna,
Oh,
uh, so we were able to double the size of property that we had here, actually triple the size of the property here. Um, and then COVID shut the world down, the pandemic, and I had a friend who was getting rid of goats, and I was like, oh, these things are adorable. I'm going to get triplets. So I got triplets, and one of them was pregnant.
oh,
And I was like, okay, now I'm delivering kids. And it was amazing. I loved everything about it. I bred goats for many years, and then we got into turkeys and pigs. And the last thing I wanted was a donkey, and I never got the donkey. But we had a big garden and canned a bunch of our own produce, and I did a lot of foraging, and we went very much for, good 4 or 5 years on the homesteading kick, self-sufficiency.
I've seen a lot of pictures when you were doing that on social media, and it's a shame you got never got that donkey because they are so cool. Cool. Now I've been around goats. I boarded my horse at a place that had not just horses but goats, and for some reason my horse ran and got to be in the same pasture, and the stable was inside the goat yard. Well, I don't know where the scar is today, but there was one horned male goat that had a thing for me. He did. He had a thing for me. And so for a long time, I had a barbed wire scar because he, yeah, he really had this thing going with me. But goats are so cool. I've been around them some. It's just it's a cool thing that you did, and the experience that gave you in the real estate industry when somebody's looking in that
Mhm.
general, because you're more out in the country than I am, and I imagine homesteading is a little more of a thing, but I've also got a friend in Michigan and homesteader big time with, I don't know, 50 acres or something and all kinds of stuff. So it's quite a thing you take on when you decide to go that route.
It is, and sadly, that is part of the reason I had to kind of step away from homesteading as my real estate brokerage business took off. I really struggled with the balance. And I was breeding and milking and, creating products and all of these things. And I travel a lot because I'm heavily involved in the real estate industry on the political side and the associations and holding board positions and things like that, that it was kind of all falling on my family. And that's not what they signed up for, to do everything by themselves. So I
Mhm.
had to kind of let things go one at a time, and it was a fun phase, and maybe someday I'll get back to it.
And on that note, I am reminded that you had a TV show for a while. Oh God.
Yeah.
Okay. Did I touch a nerve there?
No, I just don't think it's so funny because it's not a me thing. It was a random thing that came up. I had a lot of fun. It definitely helped me build a lot of confidence and and get more ingrained in the community because it was about community and lifestyle with like a touch of real estate. And I did it for about a year and a half almost, and I would probably never do it again. But from that, I definitely have learned how to to change that into video marketing for my listings and my businesses. And I still work with a videographer to this day, building commercials for my business and different things like that. So it was a really cool experience.
Well, I just love that you stepped into that, and I thought that had gone away, but yeah, you're a woman of many talents. So speaking of which, in getting into the next phase of your life with this next business, I find that fascinating. So I'm interested in how you made yet another transition. Can you give us a little bit? Because you've got my whole logo in your life. So tell me. I mean, you embody everything. So tell us a little bit about that. What we're doing now on top of the real estate.
Yeah, so part of the transition out of homesteading was a separation. And after 15 years, so learning how to live a different life, I moved into town. Now I live in a little tiny house on a city lot, just a few blocks from downtown, which I love. I really miss the peace and quiet of being out in the country, but I really love the convenience of being in town and like a bike ride or a walk away from wherever I want to go.
Right.
And and the tiny home. So I also had like this whole journey of minimalism too, which is we don't have to get into that, but it was fun. I have a whole YouTube channel on all these things if anyone wants to check it out.
Oh,
Um, so with the separation, I felt like it can be really crushing
mhm.
to 15 years, that's like a third of my life. I don't know who I am outside of that, aside from a business owner. And I knew that, we're on good terms, things, but that door was closing for a reason. And for whatever reason it was, I kept telling myself, I listened to this podcast called Claim Your Power. And I needed to have the freedom and availability for whatever was coming. And sure enough, it was within 3 months that this opportunity, moving into a tiny house, I had no longer had a home office. I didn't have space. I'm in like 700 square feet. So I reached out to the co-working space owner here in Prineville. And I knew that she had been struggling a little bit with the business. She was, having another baby and they are having to move out of the area. So I was like, hey, I really need a place to work.
Mhm.
Um, but are you going to be open? Like, how's the business doing? I wasn't sure. I talked to her a little bit about it. And she's like, actually, I'm thinking about selling it if you know anyone who's interested. So, perfect, I'll take it. Like, just like that. I was like, this is exactly what it was. This is what I was supposed to be prepared for. Everything just felt right. And within 30 days, I owned the business. And it gives me that opportunity to be ingrained in the community again. And as another business owner, I love working with other business owners too. So this gives me that kind of fulfilling. I get to help other people grow their business, and yeah, so now I own the Cove Co-Working in downtown Prineville as well.
That is fantastic, and it's just a natural flow for you. It's a natural fit for everything you've done, and what I love about it is your connections with um the healing business with women flowed right into the real estate business, and you stepped into owning, and along the way found goats and sheeps and I mean goats and not cows, but goats and chickens and all that. So, so you had a hiatus there, but that also fed into the real estate market where you live. It's a very viable option for a lot of people wanting to homestead,
Yeah.
and now you're back downtown and embracing a part of a community that you've been with for a while. What a wonderful transition. And just, yeah, I mean, you grew up in a small community and Prineville's a lot bigger, but probably being downtown feels a little bit like a small community because it's a very spread
Mhm.
out area. That is amazing. That is amazing. And your connections have have carried you through all these years. I know that that's meeting you through a women's group and all these things that we've both been through simultaneously, different paths, but not so different in a lot of transition. So that is fantastic. We will have all of your information, all the contact information for our listeners to reach out if they're considering moving to Central Oregon, or what areas do you handle with your real estate business?
We cover all of Central Oregon. So Jefferson, Crook, Deschutes, Wheeler, Lake. I mean, I've gone as far as Southern Oregon. It really depends. The primary areas that I don't work are those big city metros.
Okay.
Um, so it depends on the time of the year because I love to travel. So, I mean, I've sold homes in Albany and Medford, and then I'll just go travel and explore and have fun while I'm down there.
That's fantastic. So all of that will be everything you want on there will be your contact information available at the end of the podcast, as well as on YouTube with more information about Christina. And this has been fun, and I had no idea about some of this. So this show is meant to be a discovery of people's lives, and I've had many people comment, nobody ever asked me that before. And and I love that because it's always a surprise. I never know what I'm going to ask as a rule. And I have fun with it. But this has been delightful catching up, and I want to thank all of our Courage, Confidence, and Connections podcast listeners. There are so many more guests coming, and who knows, Christina will probably be back with another venture in the future. She's spreading her wings, guys. She's spreading her wings, and it's so awesome. Are there any parting words you'd like to share before we wrap it up?
I would just say, that uh, for anyone who's listening that, is looking to build more courage, confidence, and connections, is that you just gotta be open to the opportunities because they could be right in front of you, and don't be afraid to just get out there and say yes.
I second that 1,000%. It's definitely, there's a beautiful song, and it's by Barbara McAfee, and it's called Yes. That's the title. And I have to say, if anybody hasn't heard that, I would listen to it because I cry pretty much every time I watch it. It's a happy song. They're happy tears. But yes, and Christina has been one to say yes many times and walk through some literal fire along the way. But thank you for all your service. Thank you for being my guest. And we'll be back with another episode. Thank you for watching. Bye bye, everybody.